Farewell to Manzanar by Jean and James Houston, pages 34 through 36. In that small apartment, there never was enough room for all of us to sit down for a meal. We ate in shifts, and I yearned all the more for our huge round table in Ocean Park. Soon after we were released, I wrote a paper for a 7th grade journalism class describing how we used to hunt grunion before the war. The whole family would go down to Ocean Park Beach after dark, when the grunion were running, and build a big fire on the sand. I would watch Papa and my older brothers splash through the moonlit surf to scoop out the fish. Then we'd rush back to the house where Mama would fry them up and set the sizzling pan on the table with soy sauce and horseradish for a midnight meal. I ended the paper with this sentence: "The reason I want to remember this is because I know we'll never be able to do it again." You might say it would have happened sooner or later anyway, this sliding apart of such a large family in post-war California. People get married, their interests shift, but there is no escaping the fact that our internment accelerated the process, made it happen so suddenly it was almost tangible. Not only did we stop eating at home, there was no longer a home to eat in. The cubicles we had were too small for anything you might call living. Mama couldn't cook meals there. It was impossible to find any privacy there. We slept there and spent most of our waking hours elsewhere. Mama had gone to work again soon after we arrived. The call went out for people with any kind of skill to offer their services. Thousands were responding, with great surges of community spirit, sometimes with outright patriotism, wanting to do their part. Woody signed on as a carpenter. One of my brother-in-laws was a roofing foreman. Another ran a reservoir crew. Mama had worked as a dietitian in Washington after she was married. In camp, this was high-priority training. In addition to the daily multitude, those amateur cooks were faced with allergy cases, diabetics, nursing mothers, infants who required special feedings. For Mama, it was also a way to make a little money, $19 a month. This was top wage for an internee. Unskilled labor started at 8. All volunteer, of course. You didn't have to get out of bed in the morning if you didn't want to. Mama wanted to work. She had a monthly fee to pay the warehouse in Los Angeles, where she'd stored what remained of our furniture and silver just before we evacuated. She worried about this constantly. She worried about Papa, too. Letters from him trickled in once or twice a month, with half the words blacked out, calling her sweetheart for the first time in 15 years. She was always distracted, staring at things I could never see. I would try to get her attention, grab her around the legs. At night in bed, she would hug me close, but during the day, she never seemed to notice me. Adrift, I began to look elsewhere for attention, and thus took the first steps out of my child's realm toward a world of grown-ups other than my parents. Though I was only 7, my images of certain people from this period are very precise, because I had begun to see adults for the first time. On Terminal Island, I first saw Asians, those demon children who terrorized me. At Manzanar, past the fear of slanted eyes and high cheekbones, I watched with fresh amazement the variety of faces and bodies and costumes all around me. This may have resulted, in part, from the life Manzanar had forced upon us all. Once the weather warmed up, it was an out-of-doors life, where you only went home at night, when you finally had to. 10,000 people on an endless promenade inside the square mile of barbed wire that was the wall around our city. One of our neighbors was a tall, broad woman, taller than anyone in camp as far as I recall. She walked erectly and wore an Aunt Jemima scarf around her head. She was married to a Japanese man, and they had adopted a little Japanese girl I sometimes played with. But this woman, I realized much later, was half black, with light mulatto skin, passing as a Japanese in order to remain with her husband. She wore scarves everywhere to cover her giveaway hair. In the barracks facing ours, there lived an elegant woman who astounded me each time I saw her. She and her husband both came from Japan, and her long, aristocratic face was a ghastly white.